All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. I am Frazier, and I'm here with my top 3 deck list from the Edison 3v3 that took place this weekend. It was March 25th, 2023, and I believe that this was the first 3v3 tournament for Edison online competitive play, and it was a blast. There were, from what I understand, I think I heard 39 teams entered, which is about 117 players, so that is a lot of people. A lot of the people who do well in Edison format online, they entered, and it was a really competitive event, really fun event. I decided to not go to the Philadelphia Regional up the street from my apartment that I normally would go to play in this event. I teamed up with my two friends, Stango and a True Hero / Cairo. And yeah, we all basically ended up playing Absolute Zero. At first, that was going to be our team name. I think at one point, Cairo wanted it to be called like Cookies and Cream or some crazy nonsense. And then I was like, well, we're all playing Absolute Zero, so why don't we just be like, Team Absolute Zero or something? But I guess that would be a little too on the nose. And it might be bad to tell everyone what you're playing before the match even starts. So can't use a team name like Absolute Zero, unfortunately. It could work in your favor if you're not using that type of deck and then you call yourself that, though. But yeah, I didn't want to think about that type of thing and get all meta on everyone and be like, oh, like we're calling ourselves Absolute Zero and we're all playing Glad Beast or something crazy. But anyway, yeah, so Stango and I played the exact same deck that you see in front of you, card for card. I sent him the list the night before. I had tweaked this from winning the Beast Mode Circuit Series 5, and that was a week ago. So I played in Beast Mode's Friday night tournament, and I won that event with the Frog deck, and I like the way it played. I like the way it ran. It ran really smooth, and I made like very slight tweaks to it from there to get it to where it was for the tournament, and it performed phenomenally. Obviously, we finished in third place. We lost in losers finals, and we actually could have won. So I'll do a whole like video recapping a lot of the stuff from that event. I might do like a replay analysis and stuff like that. But yeah, that it was a really fun event, and finishing third with two of my close friends that I have been friends with for actual years, like especially Cairo. I've known Cairo for over 10 years, and actually I've known Stango too for the same amount of time because he's Kenny's cousin, and I met Kenny, and shortly after I met his cousin Stango. So we've all known each other for a really long time, so we have natural chemistry. And as you guys know, I do Master the Pupil with Stango. Like every week we record and do videos, and a lot of our videos that we do, he learns a lot of stuff. So he's gotten a lot better. For somebody who just started playing Yu-Gi-Oh in 2020, he's gotten a lot better. But as for this event, I'm really happy that one, we're all on Discord and coaching is allowed, which is a really big part of this, because the way I feel about 3v3 tournaments is the best player on the team essentially has 3 lives. And that is broken because I'm the best player on my team. And because of that, I am able to help my friends. If they don't see a certain play or if they need assistance, I can literally do that. And that means that also if I do lose, let's say I brick, which actually happened a couple times to me, where I would draw like junk synchron and 5 spells and traps that don't really do anything, which is really annoying. And I'm like, all right, I'm probably going to lose this game. But at the very least, because Stango's playing my exact list card for card, he's playing the exact same 70 cards as me, I can just help him out. And it's essentially like me having another life. So I can lose my game, but he'll win his game. And then I can trust a True Hero because he's amazing at Diva Hero. He's easily the best Diva Hero player. And because I trust him so much, I don't really have to do anything with him. Like, he can just carry himself. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that deck way better than I do. And he sees lines that I don't see because I'm not a Diva Hero player. I don't really play that deck. I'm going to start probably getting into that for Master the Pupil because we haven't done much content on it. But he's the Diva Hero expert. So it's nice that I can just like trust him. And then Stango being my pupil, I literally am able to take the same exact list card for card and we can do the same plays, and we can like tell each other these are the rules to go by. And also, I think one of the most important things that I did was I wrote out a side deck guide for the Frog deck the night before that he can refer to, and it was really helpful. And then I ended up having to refer to it at times because after a while of playing, your brain gets all muddled and you can like hardly remember some of the things that you like made rules for and stuff. So I would go back and be like, you know what did I say I was going to side against Glad Beast? And I would just pull up, my own side deck guide to do that. So it was actually really helpful to have that. And it made it where he didn't have to ask me at any point, like, oh, how should I side? Or should I do this? Should I do that? He had every single deck: Quick Draw, Dragon Turbo, Black Wings, Value Turbo, Lightsworn, Christia Sworn, Glad Beast, Cat, like every single deck in the format that I think that you could play against, I made a side deck guide for. So that way, no matter what, we would always be able to figure out and do the side decking part really, really quickly. But with all that being said, let's just get right into the actual list. So the top 10 cards of the deck, right? The frogs, you don't touch these. I mentioned this in my side decking video. These are all staples, right? Like you can't do anything with this top 10. These are the top 10 cards that make your deck a frog deck and make it absolutely broken. I'm not even going to really talk about these cards because they're all so insane and everyone already knows what they do. So there's that. But every frog deck basically has 30 slots after that, and that's the 30 slots here. You could argue that Caius is also a staple, so maybe 13 cards are staple in the frog deck. But yeah, so I decided to go with the hero build because despite the fact that it does have some inconsistencies with Miracle Fusion and like water monsters and heroes and stuff like that, I don't think it's actually as bad as some people may think it is. Like Miracle Fusion is outrageous and it's an extender that you don't normally get to do with a frog deck. Frog decks are typically one play per turn, and adding Junk Synchrons or Divas doesn't change that because those are just your normal summon as well. So like I have the 5 Monarchs here, and then I have Malicious Edge and 2 Junk Synchrons, but they are all the same thing. So every turn I have to choose which one of these normal summons do I want to do. And if my opponent stops one of these plays, it really sucks if you don't have something like Miracle Fusion because this is literally a way to extend and do an additional play per turn. And doing both in one turn is insane. So I really, really like when this deck gets all the engines flowing, everything's going well, and it can just drop bombs like Caius's or Rises and Miracle Fusions or Junk Synchrons. They all are ridiculously crazy bombs. Even Malicious Edge, a couple of games, his trample ability is super relevant. Like 2600 trample over Raikou is just 2500 damage. And I played against the actual team that won Burndig, and it actually came up where I did a ton of damage with Malicious Edge against, him setting monsters, and that really does matter. So every single tribute monster in this deck, and even the Junk Synchrons, they all have a big purpose. The other thing here is that I think Ocean is mandatory. I learned this from Rawneck, who is the absolute best frog player in Edison, and honestly one of the best players in Edison format. But like Rawneck was talking in the Edison format Discord server about how it's absurd that people don't play Ocean in a hero frog deck because he's the only hero outside of Bubble Man who honestly is not very good. He's the only hero that has perfect synergy with the deck. It's water, it's a warrior, it's searchable by Stratos and E-Call and Rhoda. It allows you to play E-Call. So if you notice, I actually play one copy of E-Call, one copy of Rhoda, and Stratos, which means I have 3 copies of Stratos in my deck. I cannot tell you how insane it is to play 3 copies of Stratos because this card, if you start with this guy, and honestly, you don't even have to start with it, but just starting with this guy is such a huge advantage in Edison. He is one of the best normal summons in the game. Like the only thing that rivals him is like Lone Fire Blossom, Swap Frog. Those things rival Stratos in terms of how absurd that normal summon is, turn 1. And what I love is when you play Stratos and E-Calls and stuff like that, you have 3 of them. So then you have like a pseudo Magician Shark combo, I call it, where if you open this 2-card combo that you play 3 of each, it leads to a really, really strong turn 1. My favorite play is Summon Stratos, Search Ocean, pitch it for Swap Frog, the special summon Swap Frog, and send Treeborn to the grave. This does 2 things. It gets you your full Miracle Fusion online from turn 1. So like immediately, as soon as the game starts, no matter what, you just have Miracle Fusion live for the whole game now. And then on top of that, you get access to the best card in your deck, Treeborn Frog, in perpetuity. So it's like, okay, you did both things. You got your hero engine online and you got access to Treeborn Frog. And then what's even more absurd is that you can choose what you bounce with Swap Frog when you do that. So you can choose to bounce the Swap Frog back to your hand and leave out Stratos, depending on the matchup. Like if I was playing against Gladiator Beast, leaving out Stratos is really powerful because he's 1800. And I was playing against something like a deck that sets monsters, or anything that plays hamsters and Raikous, a lot of times they end up having to set a monster. You can leave the Swap Frog out and bounce the Stratos to your hand. And now your opponent might not be able to kill your Swap Frog. And even if they do, you don't really care. But if they might not be able to kill it, and then you have Stratos in your hand to use him again to search an additional card. And that is just a really, really good interaction, especially when you don't have a Monarch already. You use the Stratos to search Ocean the first time, and then you can use Stratos the next time to search Malicious Edge, which is like a pseudo Monarch. And he combos really well with Infernal Prodigy, which allows you to get a draw. I've done that. I think I did that at least once. And I know Stengo did it at least once or twice as well. So it does come up. Really good stuff. The other thing that I really like about this deck, this build, is that I am on a lot of defense that makes it where you really can't do much damage to me at all. 3 Threatening Roars and double Battle Fader. This is one of the changes I made, is that I was playing 1 Battle Fader, and I think I was playing Tragodia, And I realized that I just rather have Battle Fader in most of the situations. I just don't want to take any damage at all. Like, I get that Trag is really good, but he was being a little inconsistent to me. And then when your life points get low, which this deck does have a problem with, sometimes you can just get rushed down in the early game and your life points are really low. Cards like Gores and Tragodia are dead, whereas Battle Fader, just no matter what you're at, this card will stop you from dying. So it's really, really good. I didn't want to max out on it because I couldn't find space, and that's something else that happened with this deck. So I did go full Threatening Roars. I think this card is actually absurd. I had no idea until very recently how good this card actually is. This card is nuts, okay? It allows some really, really stupid things to happen when it comes to leaving out Substitute and a Dupe Frog. So your opponent already can't really break your lock. And then when they try to with something like, let's say, DD Warrior Lady, or they just try to, I don't know, DD Warrior Lady is like the main one I can think of, but you just Threatening Roar that, and then next time you bring back Treeborn Frog, and then you can now go into a full lock with the double Dupe Frog and Substitute, or you can just Caius her away or Riser her away. And stuff like that is just huge. Like, in every matchup, being able to make it where your opponent's battle phase gets completely skipped, it's insane. It guarantees you another turn. Like, it has really good effects against Red Dragon Archfiend randomly. Like, for some strange reason, Red Dragon Archfiend just gets ruined by Threatening Roar, because if you have any other monsters on the field, they can't attack, so then he will destroy all of them in the end phase. And that actually came up in the Beast Mode tournament. Well, I guess it wasn't part of the tournament, but I ended up playing like another player for the Beast Mode tournament, just because a lot of weird stuff was happening that night. But yeah, this list I feel really confident in. I like the one Mirror Force. A lot of people don't respect it when they play against frogs, and it's very punishing if you run into it. Let's see, is there anything else? Triple Econ. I don't think I'll ever play a frog deck again if I don't play 3 copies of this card. Like, I played 2 copies last week in Beast Mode's tournament, and so many games, I literally kept saying to myself, if I draw an Econ here, I just win. So now I just play full 3 copies of it. I think we all agree that Brain Control is the best card in the format. And if Brain Control is the best card in the format, then this is just additional copies of Brain Control in the frog, like in the frog deck specifically, because this guy is free. So you just do it like actual Brain Control without a cost. And then on top of that, it can be used in other ways, which are really interesting. There was a play where I played against Rodneck actually in the tournament, and in game 2, I want to say, he summoned Christia on me, and then he summoned Treeborn Frog, like normal summon Treeborn Frog, and I had a set monster and a set back row, and he activated Creature Swap with the intent to give me his Treeborn Frog and take away my set monster. And I went activate enemy controller, tribute my set monster to take your Treeborn Frog. Now Creature Swap resolves, and I now have your Christia. That play was insane. So enemy controller does a lot of crazy things. Honestly, a lot of times just putting a monster in defense mode or putting a monster in attack mode came up a lot too. There were like 3 or 4 games that Stengo won where he put a monster in attack mode and just killed the opponent. Like, that is actually just so ridiculous that it does that too. Like, it basically is saying you can attack your opponent directly whenever you feel like it, because a lot of people have decks with tokens or monsters that have really bad stats. And yeah, this puts things in attack mode for game. So it's crazy how good this card is. And it's definitely one of the, I wouldn't even say it's like necessarily underrated in Edison format, because I think people understand that it's good, but it is literally more copies of Brain Control that have more flexibility than actual Brain Control a lot of the time. So I ended up main decking a copy of Soul Exchange because I could not find room in my side deck for the 3rd Vanity's Fiend. I was playing 2 Vanity's Fiend, and I said to myself, there's no way in the world I'm entering a tournament without 3 Vanity's Fiend in my side deck somewhere. So I had to figure out how to fit it in, but I didn't want to take anything else out. Everything in my side deck is like mandatory, right? So what I ended up doing was I took a Soul Exchange out of my side deck and I put it in my main deck, because the card is obviously good in game 1 as well as games 2 and 3. Like, it doesn't just get good games 2 and 3, right? Like, it's actually good every single game. There's nothing wrong with Soul Exchange in game 1. So I put it in the main deck, and it combos really well with obviously Substitute and stuff. One of the best plays you could do against a set monster is obviously Soul Exchange it, summon Substitute, and then start tributing off their stuff, and they don't get any effects. It's just really, really strong. So I moved this card to the main deck so that I could put the 3rd Vanity's Fiend in. And then I decided to start side decking Siroko's, and I saw this from Rodneck's last top 8 at, what was it, the RBET, where or Deck Devastators. It was the Deck Devastators tournament where he topped with the Burn Frog deck. And that deck is crazy, but he only sided 5 different cards. And one of them that he sided was triple Sirocco. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really, really good idea because against Value Turbo and Blackwings, this is a blowout card. No matter what they have on the field as far as their pushes go, as long as you Battle Fade or Threatening Roar them, you can then summon Sirocco and do a lot of damage to that deck. On top of that, though, think about this. If you summon Sirocco and pump and attack over their guy, and then you set Threatening Roar, on the next turn when they go to beat over Sirocco, because he's not the hardest thing to beat when he doesn't have all the attack power, but they go next turn and try to beat over it, and then you Threatening Roar them, they still have Blackwings on the field. So on your turn, you get to do it again. And that is just not okay. On top of that, he's also just a good side deck card against things like Glad Beast and Hero Beat and stuff because he's a 2000 attack monster. That's a normal summon. So yeah, he's really, really absurd. And yeah, I really like playing this card. I was thinking about finding ways to maybe fit Deck Devastation Virus into my side deck as well. But one, I don't even think that is super necessary. I think that Deck Devastation Virus, the decks that card is good against, you beat them anyway usually. Quick Draw is kind of a tricky matchup, but I think Vanity's Fiend just destroys that deck. So as long as you draw Vanities, I think that you'll probably beat the Quick Draw deck a lot of times. And also, most people aren't playing that deck now because of its really bad matchup against Blackwings, which is like the most dominant deck in the format. I only was able to side one copy of Cyber Dragon. This seemed unfortunate to me, but it actually didn't pan out where it mattered. I thought that, Machina Control would be maybe a harder matchup, but when I actually ended up playing Machina Control in the tournament, it was probably the easiest matchup I played all day because they set a lot of monsters like Hamsters and Raikou. It's just a Hamster Raikou deck. And their pushes aren't that scary because you just have Miracle Fusion, and the dupe block it happens to be really good against that deck. So like there's not many ways they can deal with the dupe block for one. And then on top of that, when they do deal with it, they have to like overexpose themselves. It leaves them open to really bad Miracle Fusion plays from you. And Monarchs at the right time are really painful. Junk Synchron being able to make Catastor is also really, really good. So yeah, Cyber Dragon, I thought I would need it for Machina Control, but I think the one copy is fine. And Machina Control is just not as hard of a matchup as I thought it might be for the Frog deck. Everything else in the side deck is standard. Triple Crow, Double Book of Moon, another copy of Soul Exchange, MST, which I did not main because I just think that there's a lot of Frog decks and Christia Sworn decks, and decks where this card isn't actually the best, even Dragon Turbo and stuff like that. So I opted to not really play as much back row removal because ideally, in my opinion, I think that Frogs do best when they trade against back row and then they also resolve on a monster. So you go Caius, your monster, and your opponent goes bottomless. That's a 2-for-1 trade. I just used Caius and you lost your bottomless trap hole, or I used Caius and you lost your deep prison. Every time that trade happens, it's a +1 on top of the perpetual +1 that you get with Treeborn Frog every single turn. So there's a lot of plussing going on, and a lot of times when I win with this deck, you beat your opponent out of all of their cards. Like they end up just not having cards. You end up with +4 and +5, and it's just really, really bad when the games come to an end and you just have so many more cards than your opponent. So I don't really want to 1-for-1. I don't usually want to trade 1-for-1 for my opponent in game 1. I'd rather put an MST in games 2 and 3 where way more dangerous cards come in, like Master Restrict, Pulling the Rug, Deck Devastation Virus, and stuff like that. Like I don't want to deal with those cards. Those cards are way scarier, but those are all game 2 cards. The stuff that people have in their main deck in game 1, especially now that Royal Oppression is just like not being really played at all. And that's a whole different topic, but most people don't play Oppression in their main deck. So that's good for this type of Frog deck because there are a lot of special summons, and I don't need MST if people aren't playing Oppression. If Oppression was being played, I would play MST, but because no one's really playing it, I get to put it in my side deck, and that is just really, really, really fire. So it makes the deck way more efficient game 1 because instead of playing, something like MST, I'm just playing a copy of Soul Exchange, or I'm playing a second Battle Fade, or whatever card you want to say in my main deck is swapped out for that MST. I didn't miss the MST game 1 ever, even though I did end up playing against Glad Beast more than once, which was annoying. But again, I'll talk about that in my replay analysis stuff. As for the extra deck, the only thing I would change is that, so Junk Warrior and Junk Archer, right? I never summoned those a single time. I don't think I ever needed to, although I will say, I think Junk Warrior will come up a lot more often, but Junk Archer is just pretty unnecessary. Like, if you can make this, you probably could have just made Brio and won the game that way. So it's very rare that this is going to be the reason that you won a game. And yeah, this requires a lot more of a commitment of cards. Like you have to use Infernal Prodigy plus Junk Synchron to bring back like a Dupe Frog or something. There's just a lot more that goes into making a 7. And if you're making a 7, it's most likely just going to be Black Rose. And if you can make him, you can definitely make this guy. So there's really not a reason to play this. Instead of playing this, I would just play another copy of Cataster. I actually think that Ali Adjusted Cataster further trivializes some of your matchups, like against heroes. You don't have to worry about Honest. So your Junk Synchron just becomes Cataster. Also, some of the hero decks play Cyber Dragon and stuff, so it contacts on Cyber Dragon. And then most people assume that you only play one Cataster anyway. So after they see it gone, they're not expecting it. And then against Machina Control or whatever, where you use your Cataster, then they finally out it, because Machina Control has a hard time with Cataster, by the way. But when they do out it, you just go, all right, well, I'm just going to summon another one. And just like Madara said, what will you do about the second one? So this card is broken, and I think that I just rather play a second copy of this. So that's like the only change I would make out of my extra deck. I don't think I needed anything else. I don't think I looked at my extra deck at any point during the tournament. I was like, oh, damn, I don't play this. I wish I did. Like, you could theoretically play something like Flamva or Curzius, the guy that tramples. You could theoretically play like Mistworm and stuff like that. But those cards, I don't really see them coming up. So outside of that, I don't think there's really much else to say. I think that the Frog deck is absolutely busted. I've been loving playing it. I'm getting a lot better with the deck. Still have a lot to learn. It gets into a lot of sticky situations that are interesting and tricky to navigate, but I think if you're a really good pilot, this deck is very rewarding. And it's just overpowered. It's S tier. It's always going to be S tier. The only problem I think the deck really has is that games 2 and 3, every deck side deck cards against it are stronger than what you usually would side deck against them. And so that's kind of one of the things that's a little annoying about playing Frogs, is that you win game 1 a lot for free, and then games 2 and 3 can be a bit more of a struggle because side deck cards against the Frog deck are really powerful. Deck Devastation Virus, DD Crow, Soul Release, Masker Restrict, and the list goes on. But outside of that, yeah, this deck is just phenomenal. There was some consideration that I was going to play Cameron Saunders' Diva Hero build, where you take out the Junk Synchrons and you don't play like Malicious Edge. And I think he doesn't play Ocean either. And instead you play actual Destiny Hero Malicious, and you play 3 Deep Sea Divas and Spine Gilman. But my fear was, I don't want to draw Spine Gilman. We already got one player on the team, a true hero, who's going to be doing that. I'll leave that to him. I will play Junk Synchron. There are times when Diva is more consistent than Junk Synchron, like turn 1, because Diva can do something by herself turn 1, whereas Junk Synchron requires you to have some sort of setup turn 1 to do something. So like, there is consideration for which deck is the best. And I even talked to him about this, that I didn't get enough time to test which build is actually blatantly better, because one of them is for sure better than the other. Rather it be the one that plays Divas and Malicious and Instant Fusion, or just the Junk version that I'm playing right here. I don't know which one is actually better, but this one did perform really well in the 3v3, and obviously results don't actually matter in terms of determining if a deck is good or not. But I felt more comfortable with this build because I had just won that Beast Mode tournament a week ago with this deck, and then I didn't get enough time to test the Diva version, so I felt more comfortable with this. Also, probably less bricks, because Malicious is theoretically could be a brick, and Gilman is a brick, and so many other things. So it's just like, I wanted to cut down on bricks as much as possible. And if you look at my deck, there are very few bricks, and there's a lot of consistency. Stratos ×3, crazy consistent. Swap Frog ×3, Substoad ×3, and then actual Treebone Frog. So there's like so many starters. That's 3, 6, 8, plus 3, 11. So you have like 11 cards that if you open with them, amazing. And then you also have 1-for-1. So really 12 cards, but this requires you to have a monster and stuff. So there's like not as blatant. And even Duke Frog is not the worst to open with, but ideally you just want to open up like one of these guys, and then, you know, you get the game started for yourself. So yeah, this deck, really, really good. And I will show you my list that I played from the Beast Mode tournament, just like really quick. So if you don't know, Beast Mode has a channel on YouTube, so definitely go and subscribe to him. His content is amazing, and he hosts these weekly tournaments on Friday nights, and it might change the date or something, but you join a Discord and you get to play in this tournament. It's usually like 16 people. I think he's going to bump it up to 32 people, but it's just a tournament for bragging rights, for the glory, for play testing. I love stuff like this, especially if you have nothing to do. I don't really leave my house a lot, so I'm a big fan of just doing stuff like this if I can. And I played in the one on March 17th, and I ended up winning with a very similar list. At the time, I was playing Unifrog. I was only playing 2 copies of enemy controller, and I was only playing 1 Battle Fader. And MST was in my main deck. I didn't side deck Sirocco. And then so I changed all of that stuff around, and I opted to go with the build that you just saw. Malicious Edge, I realized I don't ever really want to see more than 1 copy of it. Like, he is not a bad card, I think that people think that the card is kind of like a brick or bad or something, and I think that he's actually just perfectly fine. But the problem is, I don't ever want to really see more than one. So I think one is more than enough. And everything about this list I still like. I wish I could fit the Unifrog back in my deck. Maybe I'll try to figure that out because I didn't play Unifrog for the 3v3. I can't say I really missed it too much, but it would have made situations a lot easier. And that's kind of its power. So something to consider there. But yeah, in order to fit the Sirokkos into the side deck, I had to move a copy of Soul Exchange into the main deck. I had to also take a Cyber Dragon out of my side deck altogether. And I think that that was the right call because Sirocco was absolutely amazing for me. And it was also amazing for Stango, who played, again, the same exact deck. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. And yeah, check out the Frog decks. We have a lot of episodes on our YouTube channel with me playing different variants of the Frog deck. And yeah, shout out to everyone who basically has helped to make Frogs, like push the Frog meta, Ronnek, Cam, everyone in the Discord, Karina, like all of those people who have been playing Frogs and pushing the meta for that and trying out ideas, basically culminated into me making my own build of the deck that I really, really like. I think it's really consistent and really just streamlined, and I'm a big fan of it. I might be a Frog player from now on. I'm definitely bored of Blackwings. I don't think anything is actually wrong with the deck. In fact, that was what I lost to. But after so many times, there's only so many times I can go Whirlwind Shura and feel okay with myself, right? Like the deck is definitely broken. It's outrageous. It still does all the same ignorant things that it did a month ago in the entire Edison format. It's always going to be an S tier deck. It's always going to be one of the absolute best decks. But like for me, I've played it for so long that I just need to play something else. So I am a Frog player right now, and I am loving it. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.